Hey book friends. So in today's video, we are going to talk about my least favorite, most disappointed, worst books of 2021. I didn't know how to title this video because some of these books are well loved by other people, but they just weren't my favorite. And I wouldn't say any of these books were like 1 star. They're more like 2 or 3 star books. They just didn't really jive with me. And it's so funny because I think my personality as an Enneagram 9, I just really struggled to say a book is bad. I want to be like, oh, but there's some good parts of it, or you might really like it. And that is true. Just because it doesn't land with me doesn't mean it's a bad book. But these are the books that didn't really land with me. So hi, my name is Angie. Welcome to my channel if you are new here, or welcome back to my channel if you have been coming since it started, since this is only the second video, but welcome back anyway. And so like I said, worst videos, most disappointing videos of 2021. I'm gonna start with this book. This book, oh my gosh, I, for the most part, really love Riley Sager's writing style, but this book just fell flat for me. It's about this girl who's looking for like a ride share home from college, and she accepts this ride with this man she doesn't know. So that's where you start. But she has some issues. Her best friend was recently murdered by what is believed to be a serial killer, and so she's struggling. She's having like a mental breakdown, but she is also an unreliable narrator, where she sees these like movies in her head and then she kind of checks out from reality, and so she doesn't know what's really happening. So yeah, she gets in the car with this guy and then scary stuff starts to happen. That general premise just made me a little bit annoyed, because it's like, who in their right mind would do that? Who would be in such a fragile state and then get in a car with someone she doesn't know? Like, no one's that desperate. And then, like, the movie in her head kind of idea was just a little annoying. I don't follow a lot of the movie references, so maybe if I was a person who understood more movie references, I would have enjoyed that part more, but that part just bored me. And then how it ended really didn't jive with me either. So it's so hard because it's a thriller, so I don't want to say too much, other than there were some parts that I did feel anxious and I was curious how it was going to go, and I was invested for just a little while, and then I wasn't. So I didn't like this book. I just didn't like this book. So that's the first one I did not like. The next one I didn't like was this book. So Pachenko by Min Jin Lee. So this is a pretty popular historical fiction book, which I love historical fiction. So I picked it up and I was really excited to read it, and I really liked the first half. I loved the first half. It was about this family in Korea who's a little bit poor, and then the girl ends up becoming pregnant out of wedlock, and it starts this kind of ball rolling. And then there was this missionary man who stepped in and married her to really save her family's honor, but he then ended up taking her to Japan. And the dynamics between Japan and Korea were very fractured, especially during this time, which the early 1900s into the mid 1900s. So it's definitely a generational saga. So it's about the girl and her sons, and then it's about the sons. And so I think that's probably what did it for me, is I really enjoyed the first part where it was talking about her story. I really loved that. I was very invested in that. It's when it shifted into more of her sons, I wasn't as invested in, and I just felt like it definitely drug on. So there were some parts I really liked, and then some parts I really didn't like. And so it was just okay for me. So another book, another historical fiction book that I read that I felt just okay with was The Children's Blizzard. Again, this is one of those where I loved the beginning, then I just didn't love the characters. I didn't feel attached to any of them. But the story was really good. So the story was about this catastrophic blizzard that hit the Dakota Territories, I think in the 1800s. And specifically, this story is focused on the children. So that at that point, there's kind of like that one-room schoolhouse sort of idea. And so there's a lot of children in one spot, and then there's a main school teacher. And in this case, the school teachers were very young, and we follow 2 of them. And then this blizzard hits, and we follow what do each of them do to try to save their students. What kind of decisions did they make, and how did this blizzard pan out? And that's the part of the book that was just so engrossing. It's like watching a train wreck, is I think how I put it, because I did make a reading blog about this. It's like watching a train wreck where you just can't stop reading. It's so anxiety inducing because you're like, It sounds so cold. Are they going to make it? How are they going to do this? Oh my gosh, what would I do in this situation? How could I keep these 10 kids alive? It was so well written. The very beginning really was transportative. I believe that. But after the blizzard, I just couldn't stand the book. It was very hard to read about the people and how they responded to each of the school teachers. I did finish it. It was just a slog to the end. All right, so another book that's on my disappointed books list is another Riley Sager book. So I did do a reading vlog where I read through all the Riley Sager books that I hadn't read yet. So it was like his backlisted books. And then I ranked all of the books. I did that in anticipation of his new book, Survive the Night. And so I read this one, and this is The Last Time I Lied. And I just didn't love this as much as I have loved his other books. And I think it comes down to kind of the general premise. And so this story is about a girl who was at a summer camp, and then bad things happened. Like her bunkmates went missing and were never found. And she sort of believes, and others believe, that she is at fault in some way for their disappearances and potentially their deaths. And then in the story, she goes back to that camp as a camp counselor, and then things kind of start happening again, and you learn more about what happened then and what's happening now. And I think for me, what the letdown for this book was is I just didn't like the main character. I found her very, very whiny and very annoying, and I didn't love the way the book concluded either. So again, it's a thriller, so I can't say too much, and I hopefully I'm not saying too much. So, but I just didn't really love it. I mean, I finished it, but I didn't love it. Next book might be a little bit of an unpopular opinion this year, but I didn't love The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. It's by V.E. Schwab. I mean, I liked it. If I could have taken this book and like cut out the whole like middle, I would have loved it, because I liked the premise. I liked the premise of there was this girl who made a deal with the devil to get out of her life. Basically, she was being forced to marry someone in her town, and she just did not want to have her mother's life or her parents' life. She just did not want that, because this starts, I believe, in like the 1700s in France. So she just didn't want that life. She wanted something bigger. So she didn't want to be tied down. So she made a deal with the devil, and in it, he basically made it so that she never died, but he also made it that so nobody ever remembered her. So they could meet her one minute, and then she could leave the room. She would have to reintroduce herself to them. And so the premise there is fascinating. I mean, kudos to that. That's really interesting. I liked that. What I didn't like about this book is it just felt kind of like on repeat. Like she just kind of went through her life and some stuff happened. And it was interesting. There was stuff going on, but I just wanted to get to the end. And the end was also interesting. It definitely did conclude in a way I liked, so that wasn't a problem. It was just felt like bloated, I guess is the best. It's a terrible word. But that's what I felt about this book. Like I felt like it could have done the same thing in much fewer pages. I hate saying that because I did enjoy it. I definitely think this was like a 3-star read for me, so it wasn't a terrible book. It just wasn't exactly what I expected, and I just felt like it could have moved faster, and it just could be me though. Another book that I picked up that I thought I would really like, was this book. So it's a fantasy book, so it's called Foundry Sign by Robert Jackson Bennett. So I believe this is an adult fantasy book, and that's probably it, as I'm trying to assess if I like adult fantasy. So I found this book interesting in a lot of different ways. Like there's a girl who's a thief, and she is tasked to steal this thing that, like this artifact that is very valuable. And this artifact in some way controls part of the magic system in this world. And the magic system was what I felt like was a little bit confusing. I was able to follow it mostly. It had to do with the idea that people could make objects do things that were outside of their nature. Like it was called scribing, and so then it would make the objects do things that they shouldn't do. I think that was probably my biggest problem with this book, and maybe it just would take a reread for me, but I just didn't understand it. I wasn't tracking, and maybe it's because my life is a little hectic and I have to kind of read this in chunks, and it maybe would be better if I just kind of read it all at once. This is one of those books that kind of makes me wonder if I am in the right life stage for adult complicated fantasy, even though I really am finding myself really drawn to fantasy and really interested in picking up more fantasy. But this book was just a little confusing to me. I liked the characters, and I followed the plot for the most part. And maybe the idea is you just roll with it and you wait for answers later. I'm not sure. If anybody's read this book, help me out with that idea, because I think that's what put this on my like disappointed read, because I've heard a number of different people recommend it, but I couldn't jive with it. And so the last book on my not my favorite books of the year is also another one that a lot of people loved, but I just didn't really like it. And so that's The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. I liked parts of this. I liked the general premise. This was about two sisters who were African American in the South, but they grew up in this town that produced more light-skinned African Americans. And this was set from the 50s to the 90s. And so it tells the story of these two sisters, and one who ended up staying in the town or came back with her daughter, I believe, and the other sister ended up leaving and vanishing without a trace. And you follow her story as she's pretending to be white in California. And it was good. There were so many good parts and thought-provoking parts of this book. For me, why it ended up on my disappointed list is because I felt let down by the end. Like, it just didn't wrap up or conclude in a way that was very satisfying for me. Like, I remember being like, what? That's it? That's all we get out of these two sisters' stories and what they've been doing their whole lives? That's it? And that just kind of annoyed me to the point of being like, I was invested and now I'm not invested. Now I'm just kind of annoyed at this book. So anyway, that is the last book on my worst books, most disappointing books of 2021, whatever I'm going to end up calling this video. But let me know down below, what did you think of some of those books? Were they some of your favorites? I'm okay. I can handle that. Let me know down below. Also, let me know if there's some books that just really disappointed you, that surprised you, that you thought you were going to love, that you just really didn't love. Put those down below for me as well. So otherwise, that is the end of this video. I hope you liked it. Give it a thumbs up if you did, and subscribe to the new book channel I have going here. And otherwise, have a wonderful rest of your day. All right, guys. Take care.